Hey everyone, this is a student of the Faculty of Science, in the course CVE 100. So we are presenting on the topic global challenges. So we are going to be looking through a sequence of subtopics such as world problems, climate change and natural disaster, cyber crimes and a lot more. So we are going to be seeing how some of these areas are affecting the community and the world globally.
World problem. World problem is divided into various factors, which are the global economic, political, environmental, and social challenges. So we are going to talk about the global economy. Global economic, private sector is playing a significant role in shaping the global economic and development agenda. Some might say they are the dominant players, whereas the government sector have a particular important role to play in helping to spread the opportunities. Now we have right now the global economic provides more resilience than expected because the growth outlook remains weaker in the year 2023. The political situation of Cameroon takes place in a framework of a unitary presidential republic whereby the president is both the head of the state and head of government, and is also a multi-party man, is also part of the multi-party system. So now in Cameroon is faced with various political issues, like we can talk of the Boko Haram crisis in the far north and the crisis in the southwest region. So we have the health challenge. Health. First of all, health is about the physical well-being about somebody. So when you say somebody is healthy, you can say the person is mentally stable and free of disease. One of the most health shocking coincidence which happened in the previous year 2019, which was the COVID-19 pandemic, which affected not only the developed countries but also the developing countries which were affected by the pandemic. Malaria is responsible in Cameroon. Malaria is responsible for 1.3% of the death rate in the population. But now, since this is due to the fact that there are low medical standards, like lack of health facilities, and people who live in remote areas like villages have less accessibility to these facilities. Environment is the interaction between people that live in the surrounding area and their various occupations in which they do in that area. So now environment can either be damaged by man or can be preserved for sustainable development, whereby sustainable development is whereby the future generation will meet resources which was being kept by the present generation. So environmental challenge in some areas is different. One of the environmental challenges in the world is deforestation. Deforestation affects not only developed countries but developing countries in such a way that when the high rate of deforestation occurs in a geographical area, there's high rate of erosion, which causes less pasture lands for animals to graze and feed on. And then when there is high rate of deforestation, the soil becomes unfertile, which causes less crop productivity, which might lead to famine in the future generations. Social challenges is the interaction between people and their surrounding. So now social challenges, when we talk about social challenges, people face many social challenges in such a way that they lack self-confidence to express themselves in public. Like when you go to a bar, you sit on your own and you don't interact with people. That's one example of a social challenge. So now to eradicate this, people tend to get partners in which they are going to discuss to remove the fear of the society, like avoiding people like remove the fear of the society by not avoiding people but interacting with them to share common resources.
Okay. Poverty, hunger, epidemics, and underdevelopment are problems faced in our society today. Under this topic, we're going to look at ways on how to eradicate the conditions mentioned above. So let's begin with poverty. Poverty is the lack of basic necessities such as food, water, and shelter. Eradication strategies involve economical development, aid to distribution to developing countries, and social welfare programs. Next, let's look at hunger. Hunger is the lack of food linked to malnutrition and hence starvation. Eradication strategies involve improved agricultural practices, reduce poverty, and distribution of food aid. Next, we look at epidemics. Epidemics refer to large-scale outbreak of infectious diseases. Eradication strategies involve vaccination, treatment of infected individuals, and improved sanitation. Finally, we look at underdevelopment. Underdevelopment is low technological, social, and economical development in a society. Ways to eradicate underdevelopment have been looked at in the United Nations Millennium Development Goals, which include improving agricultural practices, improving social safeness, and fostering policies that encourage economic growth.
Climate change. Climate change is a long-term shift in global weather patterns. Climate change can have a significant impact on the Earth's ecosystem and human society. One of the most important natural disaster. Natural disaster is a major event caused by natural processes such as earthquake, volcanic eruption, drought, and flood. That leads to the loss of life and damage of property. Natural disasters have both long-term and short-term effects. Some of the short-term effects include the displacement of people and the damage of property. In the long-term effect, natural disaster can hinder economic growth, economic development, and leading to chronic poverty. To reduce this effect of natural disaster, we should improve early warning systems so that people can evacuate or take other protective measures before the disaster strikes.
Human rights. These are rights to belong to every person, despite their sex, their religion, or their tribe. There are some principles of human rights which are right of life, right to freedom, and free from slavery. These rights are important because they are important because they are found means for others who. These rights are being put in place because they are important means of protection for those who may be facing abuse, neglect, and isolation. Human dignity. Human dignity is the right of the person to be valued and respected for their own sake. Upholding dignity involves recognizing the intrinsic values of individuals, ensuring their right choices and opinions are being respected in the society.
I'll be explaining more on gender and minority issues. Since the late 1990s, the stress to improve performance of girls in terms of exam results and progression into the university. Progression into the university has now been concluded that the problem with education concerning girls has now been dealt with and revolved now around boys and underachievement. And some interpreted it as a part of backlash against girls. Three general forms that look at the recent studies of masculinity and femininity came out with three rules. The first is certain forms of masculinity are hegemonic, that is, forms of masculinity are dominant over forms of femininity. The second is some certain forms of femininity are still difficult to achieve, that is, the form, and the third is some girls choosing the forms of femininity are generally being enforced by the forms of masculinity. We have Reynolds in 1988 referred to gender as a performance. something needed to be achieved and performed. Renoyd in 2001 referred to boys as positioning themselves as knowers. In his study, high achievement of both boys and girls are problematic, involving crossing traditional gender boundary outside conventional modes, which lead us in the discovery of two forms. We have the forms of masculinity and forms of femininity. For the forms of femininity, we have Buea in 2001, who wrote of the nice girls who were considered as middle class, hardworking, and well-behaved, who lead them to the benefit of culture, but they were excluded from the society because they were considered as boring. We also have Renoyd in 2001, who wrote of the nice girl. We have Renoyd in 2001, who wrote of the square girls, considered as the middle class and anti-academic working class girls. For the forms of masculinity, we have Paul Willis and other African writers who sat down and took a later study on the forms of masculine, especially mixed comprehensive school contrasting predominantly the working class, and came out with 4 forms of masculinity. We have the real Africans, which were the middle class working boys, which considered themselves as more intelligent than the teachers. We have the academic achievers from the upper and lower middle class background, who saw education as a means to achieve their geographical mobility and also a way to improve themselves better than what their parents got. We also have the new enterprisers and the math-load working class boys. A general conclusion from this range of study is that a different forms of masculinity and femininity are now available to boys and girls in school and at particular class grouping, ethnicity, and with each difficult to achieve and require